Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sandra del Rio, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's webinar. Today's a little different because I'll be interviewing Erin, who you may already know as the host of Exploring Career Opportunities in Ecology, this series. And for those who are new, this series has been running for nearly 2 years and follows a more informal podcast style, maybe format focused on career pathways in ecology and environmental science, along with what we hope is practical career advice and honest conversations about navigating the field. And today, Aaron will be sharing more about his own career journey and experiences. A few quick housekeeping notes before we fully begin. This session is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with everyone who registered and later posted on ESA's YouTube channel for others to see, even if they didn't register. We also encourage you to ask questions throughout this hour, this webinar. Please submit them using the Q&A feature, though, so we can keep everything organized and make sure we get through as many questions as possible. And Erin, I'll let you introduce yourself and say a few opening words.
It's interesting to be on the other end of that. Thanks, Sandra. Yeah, and thanks everybody for joining. So I am at a company called Exponent. We are a consulting company. I'm an ecological consultant. I've been with the company for a little less than a year now. But I have a pretty varied career history. I should also say my position title is managing scientist, which just means I'm a scientist that manages teams of scientists. I did not think that I would end up in consulting when I first started out this career journey. I really thought I was going to be an academic, and I went through a long history of changing careers and trying to find the right fit. And it's been an interesting journey at Exponent, and I'll talk a little bit about my earlier careers later. But at Exponent, what I focus on is biodiversity management, biodiversity sustainability strategies, helping businesses understand the value of ecosystem services and in proactively protecting the environment. And it's been a lot of fun. I get to do some field work. I'd say most of my work is sitting at a desk, but I also do get to go out in the field and do that kind of stuff that ecologists love to do. So,
Right. And going back to maybe not the beginning, but earlier,
yeah.
you mentioned, I think, in that LinkedIn post that you moved through six majors
Yeah.
as an undergrad.
Yeah.
Um, what happened? What were you searching for during that time?
Yeah, I was fortunate to have parents that said, we're not gonna force you into a major. We want you to find the major that works for you. And I took that to heart. It was good advice. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I loved everything. I loved everything from art to physics, and I had a lot of trouble figuring out what the right major for me was. It's funny because if you backtrack to like my high school, I got a job working in an environmental lab, cleaning up blue crab poop. It was a aquaculture facility doing work for the University of Maryland Biotechnology Institute, and it was just a job. I enjoyed it. I didn't know that I could really make a living out of it, but I enjoyed it. When I got to college, I wasn't thinking that I was going to do environmental science at all. I started off in microbiology, and I did not like it as much as I thought I would. It wasn't the science that I really understood all that well. Like I passed the classes no problem. I just didn't see much enjoyment in the experiments that I was doing in the practice labs and everything. I switched to computer science because I've always loved coding. I've always loved experimenting with the newest tech. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, so I spent more time disassembling, old VCRs and whatnot, trying to figure out how things work. And I always loved kind of like opening up the software on my computer and trying to figure out how to reprogram it to make it do cool things. Um, And I did not particularly like that major either. I just kind of wanted to be outside more than I wanted to be sitting in front of a computer. I changed to engineering for a brief spell. Did not like engineering. I thought engineering was a science, and it is, but they didn't treat it as that. It was more like creative solutions instead of experimentation. I switched to physics. I was like a huge fan of robotics in high school, so I thought maybe that's what I wanted to do. I switched to physics, and I even was doing a minor in astronomy. I got an internship working at NASA headquarters, which everybody is like, "Oh, you did. You got this great internship," and I hated it. I hated it. It was brutal. I was sitting in a cubicle the entire time, and I have no idea what I was doing. And everything seemed to move really slowly because it was government, and I have no idea why they were paying me for this internship. But I got out of that summer internship and just decided that that wasn't the right major for me. I tried art for a little bit. I grew up in a house where art was really appreciated. My mother was a graphic designer, and I grew up with this appreciation for capturing natural beauty on a variety of different media. And I thought that I could make a living out of that. And I never really understood how they could grade me on my art projects, nor did I ever agree with the grades that were given to me. So I decided that that was going to be more of a hobby. And then at the end, like right around the end of my junior year, actually, I guess it was like the second semester of my junior year, I was taking a class in environmental science just as a general education requirement. And the guy who was teaching it, Dr. Eugene Sandy Parker, never forget him. He was a wonderful character, and he was talking about how he was doing research in the Amazon rainforest and interacting with all of these indigenous tribes. And the way that he told stories was just like mesmerizing. And after taking a couple classes with the guy, I decided I was gonna sorry if there's noise in the background. After taking a couple classes, I just walked up to him and I said, I want to change my major to this. And in all rights, I was thinking, well, maybe this is just another major that I'm going to give up. But I had still been working in that aquaculture facility, and I was like, well, I actually do enjoy doing that. So I got into a lab. Dr. Chris Swan at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. He brought me in and he gave me some stuff to work on, and I fell in love with it. And despite the fact that I came into it nearly in my fourth year, I still graduated in 4 years because it's such an integrative science that I just took all the classes. Like my physics classes counted, my chemistry classes counted, microbiology, even computer science classes counted. Um, and I haven't looked back. I thought that yeah, this is exactly what I want to do, and I started applying for graduate schools because I knew that I liked doing environmental science research. I did get an internship. I got an REU research experience for undergraduates internship working for at the University of Pittsburgh at their field station, Lake Pymatooning in Northwest Pennsylvania. And so I did that while I was an undergraduate, fell in love with that lab, wound up applying and getting into that lab for graduate school. And yeah, I thought that academia was for me. I never looked, I even skipped master's because I knew that I just wanted a PhD in it.
And so would you say there was a specific moment where ecology or science finally clicked? Was it when you got that environmental science class? Did it maybe become more real when you got that RU experience and then did the work in the lab, or maybe all of it?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely it was definitely when I took that class, that just intro
Okay.
environmental science class, that it kind of clicked for me that I could actually make a living out of doing this environmental science work. I, I don't want to like think of myself as that dumb that I wasn't thinking about it the entire time that I was an undergraduate. I think a lot of people don't really think about it as a career, right? When you think about careers that make money, you think about doctors, you think about engineers and computer scientists. You don't really think about environmental scientists. It's like I spent my childhood playing outside and turning over logs. I didn't think that I could do that as an adult and make money. And when I found out that I could, I was like, all right, sure, yeah, let's do that. But you
And
asked about a specific moment, and I will say, sorry, I'll say I don't remember. Like ecology, the classes that I took, the information just clicked. That's how I knew it was right for me. Like it wasn't hard. It all just made sense.
yeah.
Um, it's not like I got straight A's in college or anything. It just the information that was presented to me in my ecology classes just made more sense to me than any other class I had taken. It was kind of intuitive. Oh yeah, predator-prey relationships, these population modeling, they all just made sense. It was like part of a language that I had already been speaking and just didn't know about.
Mm.
But to be honest, I don't really remember a whole lot of stuff that I learned in my college ecology classes. Um, I don't think that anyone really remembers stuff that they learned in undergraduate. You remember the experiences more, and I remember Chris Swan diving after a snake while we were hiking in the field and trying to capture it so he could show it to us. I don't remember what the lesson plan was, um, but I do remember that I loved it and I loved learning the information.
That's great. And it sounded from the beginning that you were mentioning you get to do some of that as well, like being in the field. Yeah, and then you mentioned those internships you did not like. Looking back, did those experiences still taught you something?
Oh yeah. I mean, not information wise.
Mm,
Had I not done the internship, I might still be physics today. I mean, I might still be doing physics today, and I might be less satisfied with what I'm doing. Like I tell my students whenever I mentor, I used to, when I was an assistant professor, I was mentoring 40 students a semester, and I would consistently tell them all, like, you get internships to find out what you hate, not what you love. These internships that you get in college, they're often underpaid. You're doing bad work. You're like not bad work, but you're doing like the work that nobody else wants to do. Um, and you're getting your feet wet essentially. And I just did not like what I was doing. I tried to get internships every single summer. I was working in labs, and none of them really meshed with me until I went into ecology.
and so you discovered this whole different area, this within science that you understood, and the path seemed to be clear, academia.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. Nothing else really made sense. But to be fair, nobody was actually telling me what other job options there were either. When you're in college as an undergraduate, you're surrounded by like-minded individuals, and the
Right.
only ones that actually have jobs are your professors. And so you are typically advised on how to get the same jobs that your professors have, which is in academia or education. So to be fair, I didn't know what other jobs were really out there. I just knew that I loved doing research and I wanted to explore that more. I had always known that I wanted to get a higher degree. I didn't know if it was going to be a master's or a PhD, but I mean, I had conversations with my advisors, and they were all like, "Yeah, you should apply for a PhD," and I did. But I kind of, looking back, I mean, I do kind of wish that they had shown me other paths that I might have taken. Not that they necessarily knew about those other paths. But I'm not disappointed in going for a PhD by any stretch. I mean, that was exactly what was right for me at that time in my life.
And what happened during that time in academia? I think you're still. I think you and because I've known you, I do enjoy like working with students and becoming a mentor. But when did it become maybe like a reality that maybe this is actually not the career path for you, and it was a moment to make a career transition.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in between that point and undergrad. But I'll sum it up quickly and by the way, if anybody has any thoughts or questions, do feel free to throw it in the
Yes.
chat or in the Q&A. I constantly just scan them. Um, yeah, so I thoroughly enjoyed graduate school. I will say to everyone that I had a great advisor. I mean, that is not the shared experience of everyone. I understand some people get just a bad flip of the coin there, but I had a wonderful advisor, Dr. Rick Relier. He remains a good friend, and he really helped me out. Our personalities really meshed. I will say, somewhere around my third year, I got really frustrated, and I almost gave up because getting a PhD is hard. Like, no one is telling you what to do, and you have a bunch of advisors constantly telling you that you're not doing enough. So. It's hard, and I don't know that the doing experiments is necessarily hard if that's what you're trained to do, but sitting there being told that you're not doing enough while constantly trying to do as much as you can is kind of hard on the brain. And so around like year three, I was going to give it up. And I had a lot of friends and network contacts that were just like, no, keep going, push past it, you'll be okay. And that was good advice. I did, and I enjoyed it, and I got a couple of postdocs. Um, One I typically don't put on my resume. I actually went to Cornell as a postdoc and was doing some work in Colorado, and I just had a disagreement with my advisor to the point where I was like, I don't really want to do this. And so there was another opportunity to do a postdoc in disease and thermal ecology at Oakland University in Michigan, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And that's when I discovered kind of a university that was a 50-50 mix of research and teaching.
Mm.
Um, and I loved that. Like it was just great. I'm motivated by students. I love teaching students, but I also love doing the research and involving students in that research. And so that 50-50 blend of research and teaching was exactly what I wanted, and that's where I set my sights to. I had another postdoc in between. I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in upstate New York to do work at Lake George on freshwater conservation. That was a great experience too. I got a little taste of industry because the project was a collaboration with IBM, the computer company. So I got a little taste of information of industry there, and that did help me later on. I got a job working in academia at what I thought was a good blend of 50% research and 50% teaching. Um, and I did enjoy it for a while, but I burnt out really, really hard. Um, the the challenge is that, well, one, I taught during COVID. And so COVID really affected everyone in academia and in almost every profession too. But when you are suddenly forced to switch from in-person teaching to teaching from a desktop screen the entire time, that gets to be a little frustrating. But also, I think academia in general suffered from COVID because so much of colleges and universities' money is tied up in student housing. That's where they get a lot of their funds from, especially at like mid-sized and small universities. They get a lot of that money from housing. And when COVID forced people not to live at universities, I think universities lost a lot of money and were looking to save cost cut and increase course load, kind of reduce some of the benefits. And I didn't mind it, but I found out that I was working something like 70% of my time was doing teaching, and another 70% of my time was doing research, and like another 30% of my time was doing outreach. And I was in the thick of it, and I told myself every single day that I loved it. I got federal grant money to do it, to do my research, and it was a blast. But I think my mental and my physical health were taking a toll. We're taking a hit from all of that. I wasn't taking any vacations. I basically had no social life. I was really full bore into academia, and I I want to say that it was my decision, but it wasn't. It was a series of events and also my wonderful supportive wife that said, I think you're killing yourself. And she was probably right. And lots of stuff happened that we don't need to get into, but ultimately I decided that it just wasn't good for me anymore. But it wasn't an easy decision. Like, I had nothing else. I did not know of any other thing that I wanted to do. When I left the university, I had zero idea of what my next profession would be. I I actually went to work at a coffee shop for a while, because I mean, I used to work as a barista when I was in college just to make some money, and I loved doing that. And there was a local coffee shop, and I was like, sure, let's just do that. So I mean, I didn't need the money per se. I had enough in savings, but it was something to do just to, while I kind of figured out what my next step was. I thought I actually might buy a coffee shop and just do that because I actually really enjoyed it. It was quite nice. But I realized that what I actually enjoyed was not having to think about what I'm doing per se, right? So in academia and most like science professions, I would say you're constantly trying to figure out your own next step, right? You're constantly um, asking yourself, is this the right thing to be doing, right? When you're working at Starbucks or another coffee shop, right? You have a manager that's just telling you what to do, and you have a customer that's telling you what drink to make. So you don't have to think about it. It's mindless. And I think I just loved that part of the job. And I started talking with some people about like opening up your own business, and they were like, well, it's not easy. You do have to think about all of this other stuff. Um, so I realized that wasn't the right thing. And so I kind of regrouped. I applied for a few things. I applied for consultant work, but found out that I was quickly displaced from working in consulting groups because most consulting groups that were hiring at the time, at least, and I think still, are only hiring undergraduates and master's degrees. It's not cost effective for them to hire a PhD because you have to pay a PhD more theoretically. I didn't care. I don't have children, so I don't have that expense. And, we don't live a lavish lifestyle. So I didn't need a huge salary, although I do live in New Jersey, and New Jersey is insanely expensive. Um, but most consultant groups wouldn't even give me an interview. Even though I was overqualified for it, it was because I was overqualified that they wouldn't. And finally, I got a couple interviews with the state of New Jersey, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and they hired me. But they even asked me, I remember one of the managers asking me, are you going to have a God complex when you come in?
Oh,
And I was like, what do you mean? They say, well, everyone here has a master's. They don't have a PhD. So, I mean, you're coming in with a PhD. Are you going to have a God complex? And I laughed and I was like, that's the furthest thing from my mind. As far as I know, you all are much smarter than me when it comes to any type of regulation. So, like, I'm going to be paying attention to you guys as my mentors. The PhD means nothing. And so I loved working for the state. It wasn't particularly rewarding. It was, policy work. And like any government entity, it moves slower than academics for sure. And it's a blend of people telling you what to do and also making decisions daily for yourself. So it was okay. And they gave me a great pension, so I wasn't thinking I was going to go anywhere. Um, I still really, at the time, I was still really missing academia. I was missing the teaching and the research. I loved it. Um, and it was funny too because I was working alongside with so many of the students that I had helped to train because a lot of them became like new professionals with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So I would have lunch with students that I taught, and it was nice for a while.
just checking the chat and the
Yep,
Q&A.
yep.
Oh,
Thanks, Sabahat. I appreciate that.
yeah.
Devajan, I have no idea that I can
Um,
answer anything related to a J1 visa. unfortunately. If there's anybody on the chat that has any information about J1 visas in the US, please help them out. Um, yeah, that's just not my experience. And Jesse has asked, how would you recommend gaining more ecological research experience to prepare for graduate school when you've been out of college for around 2 to 3 years? Um, so I'll answer that and then I'll keep on, or I'll let you guys interrupt with some messages about ESA or whatever. Yeah, so Jesse, like that's one of the things that I didn't do was I didn't stop with education, right? I didn't bail out of undergraduate. I didn't stop undergraduate, go into the workforce, and then go back into graduate school. I went straight into graduate school, and that can be a challenge, but it really depends on what you have been doing during those 2 to 3 years. Um, if you have been doing nothing related to science, but you've been doing work related to like customer service, that's still a strength. Because, first of all, a lot of students that go and study in graduate school have never done anything besides undergraduate and now graduate school, such as myself. So they have no idea how bad it can be in the real world. And so if you have this experience like between undergraduate and graduate school and you still want to go to graduate school, it makes you a little bit more competitive. Um, for some of these graduate positions. And it's just a matter of selling yourself for what around that, like saying, okay, well, I've sown my wild oats out of college. I've gone in the workforce, and I know that I want to go back in. If you want to go to graduate school for something that's completely unrelated to your undergraduate, it's not impossible. It's just still a matter of selling yourself appropriately. Um, and those cover letters, don't discredit those cover letters. Those cover letters are your chance to explain why you want to do this. Um, for an undergraduate for experience in conservation and ecology. I'm gonna save that question for a little bit later, um, or maybe afterwards, because that's a yeah. I'll save it for a
Yeah.
little bit later.
Yeah, I think, Mary Joy, are you ready for announcements? I just do that now.
Yeah, of course. All right. All right, here we go. Thank you, Erin, and thank you, Sandra. And thank you all for joining us today for today's session of Exploring Career Opportunities in Ecology. I'm Mary Joy Malumba, Education Program Assistant at the Ecological Society of America. So our next session is going to be on June 9th. You can register for it on the ESA website, and you can also find past recordings on the ESA YouTube channel as well. And I'll post the link to those in the chat in just a second. Okay, it's been busy. It's busy spring, so there's no upcoming PD personal development events scheduled at the moment, but we're focusing on ESA's annual meeting. But we do have an outline at the bottom of our webpage, so here you can suggest different types of professional development courses that you would love to see from ESA. ESA also has a professional ecology certification program. So you don't have to be an ESA member to get certified, and you can learn all about this program at esa.org/certification or emailing cert@esa.org with any questions. Could be a great way to get experience. I know someone asked a question about that earlier. All right, the ESA annual meeting is right around the corner. This year it's going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah, and registration is now open. Early bird registration ends on June 18th. And if you're not one already, really consider signing up for the ESA membership. It could really be beneficial for those who are pursuing a career in ecology. We have two new tiers for students, $25 for undergrads and $40 for grad students. And the student memberships have all the same benefits as the regular membership. So please join today. And the applications for the ESA Excellence in Ecology Scholarship have been extended. It is a two-year scholarship that awards $5,000 for ESA members who have received their PhDs within the last 20 years in any field that will advance ecological science. Funds can be put towards travel support to next year's annual meeting, research, publication fees, and family care. And more information and where to apply will also be posted in the chat in just a moment. All right, and here are a couple career resources. The ESA Career Center, where you can post your resume, Ecolog, where you can find different job postings, and also ESA's online communities. And all of these will be posted in the chat in just a moment. All right, thanks so much. Back to you, Sandra.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Joy. And I'm actually going to, so we already went from academia, now you're in the States. And this is connected to a question that was shared in the Q&A by Andrew. When did that, like, or what happened to make that transition from working in New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, and then going into consulting, which up to now, they had basically said, we're not hiring people with PhDs.
Yeah. Yeah. So Andrew, thanks for that question. So the the current there's a role in between the state of New Jersey and my current role, and I have to weave that together because they're related. So when I was working for the state of New Jersey, something interesting was happening, and I didn't understand it. So they gave me a laptop. It's a state job. They gave you a laptop, and they told me that I should only work on that laptop. And at the end of the day, I close the laptop up, and that's it. And if I'm working from home, I should only work on that laptop. And they said, save all your files and make sure that we can access the laptop if we need to. And I was like, well, okay, fine, but why? I don't understand. Like, can you just explain it? And they said, well, we get sued a lot. And so I didn't understand that, right? It's the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, right? Who is suing somebody over protecting the environment? As a tree-hugging ecologist hippie, right? Not really a hippie, but as somebody who has spent their entire life just thinking about research, I just didn't understand why anyone would sue a public agency over environmental protection. It was really naive at the time. I just didn't understand it. And so I told myself that if there was an opportunity to start to understand it by taking a different role, perhaps on the other side of that litigation, I would. And sure enough, ExxonMobil, of all companies, offered a job as an applied ecologist. I interviewed, not expecting to like it. I mean, I'm an ecologist, for Christ's sake, and no self-respecting ecologist would ever go to work for an oil and gas company. I mean, that's horrendous. But I interviewed, not expecting to like it, but I found all of these top-notch researchers in a variety of fields who were doing high-quality work, were not being influenced by oil and gas, like, whispering in their ear, this is what you should have to publish, like a lot of people think. Like, these are top talented researchers who outpublished me substantially. Like it was great, and they all wanted to collaborate. They all wanted to talk, and it wasn't the drama of academia because they were all working for the same company and trying to improve the company. So they were all collaborating together. No one was trying to like compete, and it was nice. But also when that happened, when I took the job with Exxon. A few things. One, my salary like doubled, which was terrifying. Because I thought like, oh, if I'm an assistant professor, I'm the cream of the crop. I'm making bank. I did not know that jobs paid more than that. Again, just naive. And so I go to industry and they're like, yeah, here's your salary. I didn't even try negotiating. I was blown away. The second thing that happened is I suddenly became aware of the way that the world works in a way that I just never understood. I was on an academic pedestal for a very long time, just doing my own thing, doing the research, publishing, teaching students, not really caring too much about how the economy works or how jobs fit within the economy. And at this job with Exxon, all of a sudden I had to learn all of that stuff. And people were throwing acronyms at me left and right. And I just did not know what anything meant. I had to take economics 101 classes just to understand stuff. And I also I found myself in a position where no one else around me was an ecologist. They were all like ecotoxicologists or epidemiologists. Um, and I had to explain what ecology was to people that were quite brilliant in their own field. They just never when they think of ecology, they just think of somebody who's wallowing around in dirt trying to catch frogs. Um, and I learned how to speak with a lot of different types of scientists, including engineers, that just had no idea the value of ecology or had never really considered the value of ecology. And that, along with just working with an enormous business that is multinational, was mind blowing. And, at that point, I had still been considering, do I ever want to go back to academia, maybe try it again? I couldn't because it was like taking the red pill from the Matrix. I just learned so much more about how the world works, and I truly loved my time at Exxon. The downside of working for a company like Exxon that is multinational is that they tell you where you need to go. And they told me I needed to go to Houston, and I did not want to go to Houston. I am a child of the Mid-Atlantic, and I don't mind Texas so much, but Houston is not it's never been on my bucket list. And also my wife said no, so I also said. Um, I had time to search around and I knew enough contacts where I kind of bounced around some conversations and I chatted with some people in other businesses and I found a consulting company called Exponent. And I was wary because, again, like previously, I tried in consulting and no one was going to hire me. The difference with Exponent is that 75% of their hires are PhDs and they're not selling like permitting or anything. They're selling expertise. So they're actually the ones that are helping out with litigation. They are the ones helping out with the challenging permits that need to be filed. They're the ones helping out with sustainability strategies. And so the product is the expertise, and that's why they and there's a few other companies that are similarly aligned with Exponent in that they hire PhDs. And I'm still kind of new in the role, so I don't want to make any judgments too quick about it. But so far, I've enjoyed it. In contrast to where I was doing with like academia and with the state, I am working on so many different problems at once. And it's kind of fun for somebody that didn't really know what they wanted to do in college, where they changed majors 6 times. I get to work with all of those majors, right? I get to interact with them. And if I don't particularly like what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, I just have to start talking with other people and figuring out if there's another way for me to move into that. So yeah, it's been a fun ride. While I was with Exxon, they really pushed me more into the global arena, which I mean, I traveled before, but I never really understood what happened outside of the US. I literally just got back from Brussels a couple days ago, where I was talking with an international group about biodiversity regulation in the chemical industry. I would never have been set on a global scene if I had stayed with academia or if I had stayed with the NJDEP. Working for industry has just opened my brain up to so many different sectors. It's been wonderful.
And going along those lines, and this is hopefully covers Andrew's original question and an additional question, which is
Mhm.
how does your day-to-day work look like right now? And maybe so what does how does it compare to that NJ thought?
Yeah. So the NJDEP, the Department of Environmental
Maybe.
Protection.
Sorry.
I mean, it is so in consulting, there's something called the seller-doer mentality. Um, that
Mhm.
it's literally like you are selling as well as doing the work. Because as a consultant, you're lucky if people come to you and say, "Hey, we want to hire you and do work." But most of
Right.
the time, they're not. So you have to go out and you have to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
look at me. I'm amazing. Hire me." And so I do go to a lot of conferences where I talk with people and I try to network. And it's not like I'm going out there begging for jobs, on a daily basis. I go out there to try to expand the network and try to figure out what people need and if I can help them. Um, I was never doing any of that selling in at the NJDEP. In academia, I sort of was because grant writing is the same thing as selling. So it's fine. I know. And at Exxon, I was sort of selling as well, but selling within the company. Now I'm selling on a much broader scheme. And then I also get to be the one doing it. The challenge is that sometimes the doing stuff part is something that I just have to delegate to other people that have a lower bill rate than I do. So, like, I'm sort of mid-level at the company, and so I get to delegate to people who are a little bit lower on the ranking in the company, who are still brilliant people. They just have a lower bill rate, so it's easier. So I tend to not be doing a lot and more selling and trying to bring in jobs. But I still get to do some stuff. Like I'm going out to Illinois for some field work in 2 weeks, and then out to Texas for a conference, and I do get to do some cool stuff.
Thanks.
Yeah, I can address some of the questions, Sandra.
Yeah.
That's yeah. So, there was one question that I accidentally kind of clicked on and said, "What kind of opportunities and experiences would you focus on the most for an undergraduate for experience in conservation and ecology?" And what I like to tell people is go outside of your comfort zone. I don't really care what you're doing as an undergraduate. It doesn't matter what you're doing as an internship, just so long as you're doing an internship and you have somebody to recommend you later on. But you're going to get the most bang for your buck if you go outside of your comfort zone. Because doing that, so especially if you can travel abroad, right? 2 weeks abroad is worth, I think two years in a classroom. It just opens your mind. Um, but yeah, like I only had one internship in ecology. That's it, and that was enough. It gave me enough credentials to find a graduate program. Um, yeah, that just go outside of your comfort zone as much as possible. Um, Would you recommend going into graduate school in general? Is it advantageous if you're unsure where you're going career-wise? Wonderful question. Looking back on it, no. Um, I still probably would have gone to graduate school. I if you if you don't know what you want to do, if you don't have that goal in mind, don't go to graduate school. Because if you remember, I said in my third year, I almost bailed out. Like I just got really frustrated with my work. If I hadn't had a goal post in mind of getting an academic job as a tenure track academic, like I would not have continued on past that third year. I had a goal. It was a hurdle. I jumped over that hurdle and I kept on going. If you're not absolutely sure that you want to go into graduate school, that you want the jobs that graduate school can give you, don't go to graduate school yet. Work in the job market, doing something, figure out what you like or what you hate, and then go to graduate school. But if you want to do environmental science, make sure that you're doing something related to environmental science. It could be very distantly related, just something related that you can speak intelligently to a graduate review committee or something. Um, Brianna asks, do you think online master degrees are valued just as highly as in-person programs? That is a fantastic question. And actually, while I was an assistant professor, I actually co-coordinated our dual degree program. So we had a professional master's program. And that professional master's program was generally speaking in person, but it was designed for people working in the field. So it was only evening classes, and there were some online classes as well. Those online degrees, you have to be careful because there are many universities that are pariahs. They sell you on this degree, and you just wind up spending a lot of money for nothing. But a lot of those professional master's degrees, they go around to businesses in the state that they're operating, and they just go to the businesses and they say, what would you like your future job candidates to have? And they say, oh, well, we want them to have a class in biogeochemistry. We want them to have a class in GIS. And so these professional degrees will create a program around the needs of the local employers so that when you graduate, you're basically already in the door. The problem with some of the online programs, like the more generic ones, is that they're not catering to any particular job market. They're catering to an average. And so you do have to be careful and sort of monitor yourself for yourself about where they're taking you. I would be much I would recommend far more if you were to go and do a program in the state that you hope to be working at, or at least at a university that is specializing in online environmental programs, if that's the field that you want to go into. Somebody asked, can you please name a few of the consulting agencies hiring PhDs? Um, I do have the Exponent background, but I'm more than happy to also recommend colleagues at other places. Always shoot me a connection on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to introduce you. Off the top of my head, Ramble is a big one, and they sponsor ESA every single year. Ramble is a wonderful company, and I've worked with several of them. There's another company called Integral that does that. ERM does some ecological consulting. And there's a few other ones that are smaller, but they will hire PhDs. I don't think that I would have gotten a job at a consulting firm if I had not worked in industry first. I think that that's what helped me get that job is because they saw my industry experience.
And I'm just going to add a link to our certified ecologist directory
Yeah.
that you can find people there if you feel confident in sending them an email just out of curiosity, asking them if they know of opportunities. But yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
do
You
anonymous.
know, if you come across someone that if you come across a job that you might like, right? If you come across an agency that you might like, I recommend emailing them and just asking for
Mhm.
information. The trick to emailing, and I think a lot of people don't get this, I certainly didn't get it. Don't send a long email and don't talk about yourself. Like consistently, people love talking about themselves um, more than anything else. So when you go to send an email asking about a job or something, just say, I'm interested in this job. I'd love to learn more about what you are doing, the research that you're doing, or the day-to-day work, and see if this is the right fit. Don't launch in with, I do this and that, and I have this experience. No one cares. I mean, they will care eventually, but for that initial interaction.
Yeah, and this is also like you can see the names of companies and then you just Google or web search, oh, what's this company about? And have maybe if they have a staff directory, you can get an idea of, who's
Yeah.
there.
We had a
Um,
really great Ashton, I believe,
yeah,
a previous interviewee on this webinar series. She had wonderful advice that I echo. She said she also did not know exactly what she wanted to do after working in the field for a while, and so she just started talking with people, and she made it a point to ask each person that she talked to for additional recommendations of other people to talk to. And
right.
she just said, like, I just started trying to talk to at least three people every single day. Even if it was only for 5 minutes, she just would talk to people and get more recommendations and expand her network that way. And when people come at me and they're like, I have trouble finding a job, my response is always the best way to get a job is to interview. And the best way to interview is to talk with people. So like as you talk with more people, you are statistically more likely to get interviews. And as you do more interviews, you are simply more statistically likely to get a job. And I do feel for people that have been applying in like hundreds of jobs and still haven't gotten anything. It's a rough market, but if you have been applying for hundreds of jobs, it might be the way that you're selling yourself, and it might be worth it to actually seek the advice of professional consultants who specialize in career coaching And we've had several of them on this podcast, on this webinar, and I can certainly recommend several that I've talked with in the past, and would be happy to send them some students.
Yeah, and that was going to be my follow-up question because we often hear advice like network or build experience, and what does that actually look like in practice, maybe for someone early in their career or just coming out of PhD? How do they get a job?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ecolog is certainly great. I mean, there's the Texas A&M job board, Ecolog, conservation jobs. I mean, these are all great opportunities. But to be honest with you, the thing that really helps you get a job is going to conferences and networking the heck out of yourself. I I tell be awkward, right? It's fine. I am extremely awkward. I cringe when I think back on how awkward I've been when contacting people. Um, but it's okay. You're not going to perfect networking as soon as you start. ESA is an extremely approachable conference, and I'm not trying to sell ESA. It's not my job to sell ESA to anyone, but I will say in my senior year, when I fell in love with ecology, my advisor, Chris Swan, said, "Why don't you come to ESA?" It was, I think, I don't remember where it was that year, not Portland. And I went and I had a blast. He introduced me to all these people, and then I went up and I shook hands with people. I was kind of like doing that awkward thing where I was looking at people's name tags to see if I knew them from papers that I was reading. And then I hung out at the hotel swimming pool for a while because why not? Somebody else is paying for it, so I'll enjoy myself. But it's that networking, and ESA is just really, it's a very open and fluid place to be networking at. People are quite happy to shake your hand. Last ESA, I remember somebody coming up to me and kind of giving me a deer in the headlights face and shaking my hand and introducing themselves. And they were so awkward and it was so fun. It was so endearing. And I was just like, all right, let's have a conversation. It's cool. Because that's what ESA is all about, right? I mean, it's all people just like either looking for jobs or having jobs, but we're all interested in helping the environment. So,
We have Career Central, and we're gonna have career coaches this year again, so in
yeah.
person this time. So hopefully some of those that can get benefit from that. Let's see,
So many questions.
yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah. Though I think we covered those for those who are coming out of a PhD. I think it's be awkward, talk, network, whatever that looks like. If you can go to a conference, go. Um, Yeah, it doesn't have to be ESA, just go to a conference. Um,
So I just finished my PhD and I'm not sure if I want to continue with postdoc. I might prefer something in industry. How can I market myself to avoid starting in an entry-level position?
mm,
I think you have to define what an entry-level position is, right? So for a lot of companies, an entry-level position is a PhD out of graduate school, right? I mean, they'll pay for you. They'll pay a PhD salary. But I mean, I wouldn't expect to be making bank right away. Like I spent 6 years teaching and doing research after my postdocs, and then I spent 1 year working for the state of New Jersey, and then I spent another 2 years working for industry, and then I landed a consulting job, right? So like if you were to apply as a PhD to a job, you are going to like a job at Exponent, you are going to be at that entry level. So yeah, I mean, if you don't want to like be making $50,000 a year at a state level job, yeah, totally understandable. But I would absolutely, depending upon where you're applying to, definitely try to define what an entry level position is. What are some skills you would recommend for an early career scientist in ecology to abreast themselves with the aim of being a consultant and work with NGOs? Wonderful question. Oh, I love it. Um, take some economy classes. Take like micro and macro. Oh my God, I wish I had done that before. So if you want to work as a consultant, you have to understand why people even approach consultants in the first place. That's the way that you're going to be successful. You have to think like the clients that are going to be paying you. And most of the time, the clients that are going to be paying you are contracting engineers, they're project managers on their own right, and you have to understand their world. Now, I'm not saying that if you work for a consulting company that primarily gets jobs from like construction groups that you have to understand construction. No, but you have to understand why they want to hire you in the first place, why it makes sense for them to hire a consultant instead of hire a full-time ecologist. I also highly recommend to take some environmental policy classes. When I went to undergraduate, things were relatively stable. We were getting progressive. I did not ever expect environmental policy to take such a downturn as it has in the past, unfortunately, decade now. Um, it's scary to think about environmental policy right now, only if you haven't taken in policy classes. It is well worth your time to take a policy class. Aside from that, like the technical skills, yeah, you should probably learn GIS. You should probably know how to work in R. You should take some statistics courses and everything. Most of the stuff you can learn on the job. It's not absolutely necessary that you have all of those courses. So if you are, in between undergraduate and graduate or graduate student and you're still searching for a job, but you don't have any GIS courses, it's fine. You can learn that stuff on the job. But I also do recommend taking um, if you can, take some classes in like human resources or interacting with people, like these soft skills, project management, even. Learning how to work with people is not something that academics typically get trained on. We love experiments, we love books. We don't get a job working in science because we love people. Those jobs are for retail. We get a job because we like science more typically than we like social interactions. And so most people don't have that skill. So I recommend that you somehow get that skill, even if it means just going to your local like Toastmasters club to get experience in talking in front of a public audience. That's better than nothing. One more question and let's cut it. What, if any, of the positions that you have had outside of academia would you recommend to someone who is mostly interested in research? Um, that's a tough question to answer these days because the funding for research organizations outside of academia has transitioned from federally funded to privately funded, and so it's difficult to know where those jobs are. The best bet, if you are interested in doing research, but you don't want to do the grind of tenure track academia, find technician jobs. They're not going to pay a lot, but they're going to let you stay in the laboratory, gain new skills. And while you are a technician, offer to adjunct, right? Offer to, maybe do a small experiment on your own. Make sure that the lab that you are being a tech for will include you as like the fifth author sandwiched between 10 others on a paper. Make sure that they will include you so that you have that exit ramp if you want it. But I also know people that are technicians for life. That's just what they like doing, and that's totally fine. Again, it's kind of like that coffee shop experience where people are just telling you what to do. That's kind of nice. You're not going to get paid a whole lot, but if that's what you want to do and that's what makes you happy, and then you go home at the end of the day and you have your own hobbies, then what a wonderful life to have. But do make sure that the lab includes you in the work so that if you ever do want to expand out, like you don't want to be 40 years old and doing technician work, you want to expand out, make sure that you're in a lab that will allow that to happen. Um, yeah, so that's good. Best way to get your foot in the door with these companies, Right now, LinkedIn is great. Go to conferences if you want to get a job. So unfortunately, ESA is currently a little light with businesses and consulting. We are trying to change that. This year is a major milestone that I won't get into, but we're trying to bring a little bit more to help those students that want to get those jobs in. Um, but yeah, just network with people on LinkedIn. Say, hey, I'd just like to chat with you. Can I learn more about your experience? If they don't answer, you probably don't want to work for them anyway.
Through
Hey,
that.
no open questions. I like that. Hey,
Yeah.
everyone, thanks for listening in. It's a little awkward for me to talk about my own experience this way, but I appreciate it. And thank you, Sandra and Mary Joy, for moderating. Do look me up on LinkedIn if you want to connect. I'm always happy to reach out. If I don't answer right away, it's not because I'm ignoring you, it's because I'm busy. Um, I might be. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I'm not.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, everyone. And yeah, until next time.
See
Bye.
you.